myself Aditya P. Tripathi. I am here to continue our discussion on a very important topic of CSR, that is mandatory CSR versus Gandhiji's trusteeship model. Because when this enactment of CSR came in the year 2013, many people were talking about CSR, mandatory CSR in India, and across the globe there was a discussion going on that India has mandated CSR. India as a country has made it mandatory to spend 2% of their profit on listed CSR activities, and when this enactment came, people thought across the globe that it is a new thing in India, but being an Indian, I can say that it is not at all a new thing for India. And long back we have been having this tradition of philanthropy, or what you call as looking for the betterment of the society, thinking for the betterment of the society. And since the very year of our independence, that is 1947, most of the corporate entities which are still working in India, and they have done a lot for the betterment of our country, and they actually came forward to start business. Initially the state came as a facilitator, and we were talking about the state participation in business, whether government should come for the business or not, and government started with taking control of all essential activities, be it water supply, be it electricity, be it aviation, be it railways, be it transportation. So if we talk about transportation, communication, all those important infrastructure related activities, they were under the control of the state, that is called government. And basically the government had to run. It was a compulsion on the government to make things moving, and for that they the state came for acting as a businessman. And also there were top business performers, top business entities, top corporate entities, which actually worked with the government, and they have also contributed significantly for the betterment of our society and for our country and economy. So when we talk about mandatory CSR, there is a discussion which goes on in the classroom and also in the conference room, that whether this mandatory CSR is a kind of revisiting of Gandhiji's trusteeship model. I would say personally that yes, to some extent it is the same, but Gandhiji's trusteeship model was a kind of voluntary act, voluntary theory, voluntary model, which corporate entities were supposed to comply with. They are supposed to follow. It was expected from them to follow this, whereas in mandatory CSR, most of the things which were present in Gandhiji's trusteeship model, you can find the reflection of those important points of Gandhiji's trusteeship model in mandatory CSR, but in a different fervor, in a different you can say framework, where it is mandatory for the companies, and there is a legislation for that, so that it can be streamlined, and we can have a uniform kind of expenditure on CSR, listed CSR activity. So with this background, I would be telling you about the Gandhiji's trusteeship model in today's lecture of mine. I'll tell you what the father of nation wanted to say in that trusteeship model, what is the essence of that Gandhiji's trusteeship model. That will actually be my point of discussion in today's lecture. So I'll be telling you about the trusteeship model of Mahatma Gandhi, and what are the similarities and points of differences when we talk about mandatory CSR vis-a-vis this trusteeship model. So if we talk about what Gandhiji wanted to say, there is a very significant quote which I would like to cite here. Gandhiji said, and I quote, "I offer the economics of God as opposed to the economics of the devil, which is gaining around in the world today. The latter aims at or results in concentrating ₹1,000,000 in one man's hands, whereas the former in distributing them among millions or thousands. The industrialism of today is fast destroying the village in India." So what Gandhiji wanted to say, India, which is known as a country of villages, we have still more than 6,75,000 villages. And the essence of this quote is that rather than giving ₹1,000,000 in one man's hand, we should distribute this ₹1,000,000 in them among 1,000,000 or 1,000 people. So 1,000,000 rupee in one man hand, on one hand, and on the other, on the contrary, millions of hands are holding that 1 rupee in their hand. So this is what Gandhiji wanted to say, that the wealth should not be concentrated. People thought initially that he was opposed to creation of wealth. He was opposed to creation of capitalist economy. He was not against capitalist activities. To my mind, what he was against capitalism. That you should not become so blind that you are only thinking of yourself, and your country is divided into two groups of haves and have-nots. So in order to ensure that in your country people are having at least a minimum level of standard in terms of their living, which is to be ensured, they should have access to all the basic amenities, say health, education and other amenities, and that was the dream of our father of nation. He wanted to say that only in this specific quote which I have quoted. Now with this background, a question comes to your mind: what is this trusteeship? For what I am going to be a trustee? From where this amount comes? When we say trusteeship, it is basically, it's a theory of trusteeship, is an idea that wealthy people should consider their property as what God trusted them to manage as trustees for the benefit of the poor. This is what was basically Gandhiji's theory of trusteeship. He said, if you are wealthy, you have sufficient amount of money, then you should consider your wealth to be a God given property, and God has entrusted you with this responsibility of managing that money as a trustee. You are trustee, custodian of that money, and you should spend that money for the benefit of the poor. And if you ask me in one line what is trusteeship, I would say it is basically a socio-economic philosophy that was propounded by our father of nation, that is Mahatma Gandhi. So he wanted to say that if you are having wealth, don't consider it to be yours. Rather than considering this, you should feel that I am basically acting as a custodian to this wealth which God has given to me, and while spending that money I should take care of the benefit of the poor. And this theory basically legitimated the positions of capitalists and landlords in society as long as they behaved as trustees. So it said that we are not against the capitalist people, or we are not against the corporate entities, we are not against the landlords in society, as long as they behave as trustees. They should not feel that they are the creator of that wealth and only they are supposed to have that wealth. That should not happen. So my dear learners, why I have chosen this topic of trusteeship, just to make you understand that there is a long-standing philosophy of Gandhiji's trusteeship model, and when we read the Western thinkers and when we study their ideas, it is very much pertinent to note here that what was there in our country, what is our philosophy, what is trusteeship all about, and why this theory of trusteeship was given by a person who is basically called as our father of nation, and we believe in his ideas, in his theories, in his models. So why not this trusteeship also, which should be discussed? So this theory basically legitimated the positions of capitalists. It was never against the capitalist, but it was against capitalism. Now when we talk about the ideology of Mahatma Gandhi, basically Mahatma Gandhi as an iconic figure, he was having this ideology, and that ideology is still relevant after 100 years as it was at the time of its inception. Still it is relevant, and I can show you the relevance of I can justify that relevance of those ideas, those models, that ideology which Mahatma Gandhi has propounded. His critique of capitalism, industrialization and modern civilization still they were saying, but it is still holding good. Voices of dissents have always been there, but vices of modern civilization merit rethinking on Gandhi in contemporary context. So So there can be a voice of dissent on this very idea of trusteeship model, but given the vices of modern civilization, it is worth rethinking that what was the motive behind having this kind of ideology, having propounded this kind of theory of trusteeship. What was there? See the extent of the vision a person had 100 years back. In 1909 he gave this idea, and it is still relevant. Expansion of capitalism and modernism resulted in many evils that were prospered by globalization. I am not against globalization, but if there are certain demerits, we are supposed to think about it. It is ruthless exploitation of natural resources. We are talking about environmental degradation, pollution. We are talking about labor problems and pandemics. Along with that, the traditional holders losing their rights over the land to make way for big corporations. There were certain states where it was very prominent that the traditional holders of land, they lost their rights over the land to make way for big corporations. So not every corporate entity is bad, not every idea is bad. It is only the way you think. While spending your money, while earning the money, not only while earning but also while spending the money, you should think about the downtrodden segment of our society as well. And these sins are seen as a product of unethical business practices. And in scramble for money, power and land, all ethical norms of business practices were overlooked, and the consequences are before us. They were before us. Time and again we witness that somehow because of one negative activity, one segment of society is being sidelined, and that should not happen. So business is now called upon to pay for the damages and reform its way of operating. So if you are degrading the environment, if you are causing some harm to the environment, who is going to repair that? It is you who will do that, because at least leave the world with the same kind of storage, with the same kind of natural resources which you have got, which you have inherited from your forefathers. Otherwise the coming generation is not going to forgive us. So earlier it was only an emotional call, an emotional appeal, a rational appeal, but now it has come in the form of a mandate. But yes, appeal was there since long back, and that is why we say that mandatory CSR is basically a kind of revisiting of Gandhiji's trusteeship model to a greater extent. So CSR is seen as a panacea that would mitigate all these evils, and it may be a new concept and matter of debate for other parts of the world, but to my mind, I would say, I personally feel that it has always been embedded in Indian philosophy of giving back to society. We belong to that society where we always think of the downtrodden segment of the society, the poorest segment of the society, and as a member of society, we have to basically try to give back to the society, because our survival is dependent upon the society only. When we teach marketing, there we do teach that a marketer is taking all the sources, taking all inputs from society, and transforming it into a product with the help of society, and eventually offering it to, again, going back to society to sell it out. So in this entire process, from input to output and then to selling, the company's survival is dependent upon the society. So they are supposed to, who else is going to take care of society? It is you as a corporate entity who has to take care of the society. So it is our chance to give back to society, and Gandhiji basically carved it out as a weapon in the form of trusteeship, that as a corporate entity, since you are surviving with the help of society, you should give back to society, you should think of society, become a custodian of the wealth you have generated. Don't take it as your own, become a trustee. And this trusteeship model is very much relevant. And if we go spiritually, earlier we were talking about smart leaders, now we talk about spiritually smart leaders, creating spiritually smart leaders. And when we talk about spirituality, we have Srimad Bhagavad Gita saying that we should not have that karta bhav into us, that I am doing anything. It is basically the Almighty who is governing everything, and we are simply working as a custodian. We are simply given this responsibility of performing certain duties. Now coming to the basic understand, after discussing the basic meaning of trusteeship, now it's time for us to understand what is trusteeship all about. When we talk about Mahatma Gandhi, we are reminded of a very old book, that is Hind Swaraj, which was published in the year 1909, and it is basically known as the Immortal Treatise of Gandhi, written in 1909, and it condemns the modern civilization because of deficit of welfare element and navigates readers to a religious and primarily ethical path, that what we say as the ethics and governance, so they go hand in hand. So when we talk about the governance, we should look at the ethical aspect of the activities, that we should be ethical into our performance. And for Mahatma Gandhi, a true Indian is one who believes in Swadeshi and encourages others to do it. He, although I don't want to say that we are against globalization, but yes, we should look for our we should look forward to our own heritage also, our own culture also, and that is why now we have. I can proudly say that the present government is working for the Make in India campaign. That in a country like India, you should. Why not make in India? Why not stand up India? So we are basically working. We have our own startups which are working for the betterment of the nation. So for Gandhi, a true Indian is one who believes in Swadeshi and encourages others to do so. It is duty of a rich to provide work to toiling hands, as per Mahatma Gandhi, that it is your duty, if you are having if you have created wealth, it is your duty to provide work to toiling hands. And this primary form of trusteeship is visible in Hind Swaraj. When you read that book, you will find that. Now his idea on trusteeship are found in Harijan and Young India also. He believed that a person is entitled to wealth which gives an honorable livelihood, and the rest belongs to community, as rich had created and accumulated the wealth only with the constant labor and support of the poor in a society. So Gandhiji said that he believed that a person is entitled to that proportion of wealth only which is giving you a respectable livelihood. A rest belong to the community because you have created or generated that wealth with their cooperation, with their help. And everything belonged to God and was from God. So it is from the Almighty you are getting, and it is basically belonging to God. And therefore it was for His people as a whole, not for a particular individual. It should be for the society, for the people of God, not only for the one person or the one entity. When any individual is having more than his proportionate portion, he becomes trustee of that portion of God's people, and he has to act as a custodian. If I have to elaborate the idea of trusteeship model, Gandhiji said that he would allow a man of intellect to earn more, but for the good of the state, not for the selfish activities or self-interest of that person. And he has given a very wonderful example of a joint family system, a kind of anecdote which we even today find very relevant, that in a joint family system, just as income of all earning sons of a father go to the common family fund, and so should the bulk of greater earning must go to the state. Like in a joint family system, which is basically which was basically the identity of our Indian traditional families, and there all earning sons, they were supposed to contribute to the common family fund with their earning, and each and every member of that family used to have a respectable standard of living with the help of that income. It was not compulsory that every member is earning the same amount. But yes, of course, every member was having the similar level of standard of living, and that was basically increasing or adding to the prosperity of that family, which is now missing with the emergence of nuclear families, or what you call as two members family only. So the common family fund and the likewise the bulk should the bulk of greater earning must go to the state. And if you believe Gandhiji, he allowed trustees to take only what is fair. And he in his words, I would ask a man who purchases rupees 100 to take rupees 50 and give other rupees 50 and give the remaining 50 rupees to the workers. But to him who purchases rupees 1 crore, he would perhaps say that take 1% of yourself. So if you ask me that on the basis of that idea, we have to understand the essence of it. The idea was that proportion of there was no fixed rate like your taxation system where you have a fixed rate of taxation. Proportion is not having a fixed figure. A person earning or inheriting more contributes more for the community. So the objective was to ensure that along with your development, your personal development, the community development or the social development should also go. So they should go hand in hand. It should not be like that you are having significant amount of earning, you are generating your capital, you become a capitalist, and you're not doing anything for the society, or the people who are working under you, they are still downtrodden and they are not able to have a respectable level of standard of living. So that should not happen. That was the motive behind trusteeship. When we talk about Gandhiji's trusteeship model, I personally feel that the objective of it was, initially when this idea came, many of the industrialists or the corporate entities or the landlords or even the people from opposition, they were against it because they felt that he was against creating wealth. No, he was not against creating wealth. He said that you should create wealth. If you are able to earn more, there is no foundation on that. You can earn, but remember that beyond a level which is a respectable level for you to live and for your family to live, whatever surplus you have earned, that belongs to community, and you should consider yourself as a custodian for that part of your earning or your wealth, and become a custodian, become a trustee of that money, that wealth, and try to do something positive, or try to basically disseminate that benefit to the society at large. That was the motive. When we study the trusteeship model, there are different authors who have basically given their opinion on Gandhiji's trusteeship model, and they have been duly recognized here also. I have cited their name in the reference list of this lecture. That there are 6 principles of trusteeship. If you talk about the principles of trusteeship, there are 6 principles of it. The first one is a means of transforming the present capitalist order of society into an egalitarian one. Owing class can reform itself by following this, and a right of private ownership of property as may be permitted by society for its own welfare. So basically it allows limited right to property but in welfare of society. So there was no ban on ownership of property. It was basically supposed to be executed in a controlled manner. That was the second principle of trusteeship model. If we look at the third one, it does not exclude legislative regulation of ownership and use of wealth. State can legislate on ownership and purposes for which the wealth is to be used. So the responsibility of state becomes very huge, and they are supposed to ensure that yes, you can own the property, you can own the wealth, but it is supposed to be used. The purpose for which you are going to use it, that need to be defined. Next one is, individuals will not be free to hold or use his wealth for selfish satisfaction. You should not use the entire wealth for your self-interest only. And whatever is the respectable money, respectable wealth you are supposed to have. Now again, there is a term called fairness, which is very difficult to define. But we have to look at the essence of this very theory, or what you call as trusteeship model, that what he wanted to say out of this trusteeship model. And this principle emanates from the earlier ones. Moreover, the original owner or first trustee will choose the successor, but to be finalized by the state. So if I am trustee, who will become my successor, or to whom I am going to give this right, that need to be finalized by the state. Next one is, a limit should be fixed for the maximum income that would be allowed to any person in the society. This is your maximum limit of earning which you are supposed to have in this society, and that should be decided after proper thinking, discussion and deliberation. And this is again complementary to limited right to property. There has to be a reasonable difference between minimum and maximum, and tendency should be towards eradication of difference gradually. See, the objective was to ensure that there is no poverty in the society, and your society should not be divided into two segments of haves and have-nots. That was the basic motive behind propounding this very idea of trusteeship model. Production will be determined by social need or utility. Personal greed has no place in Gandhian economic order. If you look at this trusteeship model, it has no place for greed and of course for greedy people, and they were the one who were opposed to this very idea. And if you ask me that his trusteeship, what it was, I would say that his trusteeship was a radical concept, and it demanded lots of soul searching, or you can say you have to talk to your conscience, your conscience, whether whatever I am doing is right or wrong, and letting things go on the part of the business class. So basically it was a kind of soul searching idea, that you need to ask yourself what you call as the voice of your inner voice, what you call as your antaratma ki awaaz. So you should listen to that voice, what your heart says, what is coming from inside, that whether whatever wealth you have generated you should spend on yourself, or you should also do something for the society. So Gandhiji believed that trusteeship would replace philanthropy, and he was not against entrepreneurs, but he wanted to change their orientation to that of a trustee. Rather than simply creating a wealth, they should become a trustee or custodian, and that was the basic idea behind having this kind of trusteeship model. So with this, my dear learners, I have tried my level best to give you a brief introduction of what was there into Gandhiji's trusteeship model. And mind here that whatever is given there into that trusteeship model, if we could implement that in letters and spirit, there was no need of mandatory CSR. So this mandatory CSR has come as a revisit to that trusteeship model, and we should think and we should try to work for that. So these are the references which I have referred while preparing this very lecture of mine, and I hope you must have understood the very basic concept of or idea of Gandhiji's trusteeship model. I hope you must have enjoyed today's lecture of mine. Thank you so much.